Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on post notification so you don't miss our next story. All right, let's get to it.
Vanessa stood in front of the mirror that morning, tying her silk wrapper securely around her slim waist. Her eyes, once bright with excitement for each new day, looked tired now, as though they carried the weight of unspoken worries. The house in Lekki was quiet, unusually so. The hum of the AC and the faint sound of birds outside were her only companions. She tiptoed into the kitchen to prepare Charles's favorite tea, hibiscus with a hint of ginger, just the way he liked it. While the kettle boiled, her mind drifted to her skincare business. The small brand she'd been building quietly, mixing natural ingredients sourced from local farmers in different parts of Nigeria. It was a dream she had nursed for years, carefully researching, blending, and testing every jar by hand. She was supposed to tell Charles about her big breakthrough soon. A global investor had shown serious interest, and the papers were nearly finalized. But each time she tried to speak, he brushed her off. Charles appeared in the doorway, sharp as always in his gray suit. His face was buried in his phone. Without looking up, he took the steaming cup she offered, muttered a quick thanks, and walked to the dining table. Vanessa sat across from him, searching for any flicker of warmth. Nothing. The man she once adored had grown distant, wrapped up in real estate deals and endless social events. She knew he had stopped inviting her to parties because she wasn't glamorous enough. He wanted a woman who sparkled under the Lagos nightlife, not one who spent hours in the kitchen mixing shea butter and baobab oil. She forced a smile. "Good luck with your meetings today." Charles grunted, eyes still fixed on his phone. After a few seconds, he sighed loudly and finally looked up. "Vanessa, we need to talk," he said flatly. Her breath caught. It was the sentence every woman dreaded. She clasped her hands together tightly, hoping she was misreading the moment. "Talk? About what?" she managed to say, her voice shaking. He put down his phone and leaned back. "I can't do this anymore. I think it's best we end this." A wave of cold spread through her body. End this? Their marriage? The life they had built together? The shared dreams? Charles continued, his tone cold and practiced. "I need someone who matches my energy. Someone who can stand beside me at events and add to my brand. Not hold me back with homemade soap and creams." She felt as though the floor had vanished beneath her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. "Charles, we can fix this." "I'm trying." He shook his head. "No, I've made up my mind." She sat frozen as he stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the steaming tea and a heart that had just shattered into 1,000 silent pieces. Vanessa stared at the divorce papers for what felt like an eternity. Her hands trembled so much she could barely read the bold letters at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. She thought of all the sacrifices she had made. Moving away from her family to support Charles's dreams, giving up lucrative job offers to manage the household, putting her own ambitions aside when he needed her presence at business functions. It all seemed to vanish in a single moment. Charles barely looked at her as he gathered his keys and phone. His face was expressionless, as if this was just another business decision. "Please sign them quickly. My lawyer will come by later today," he said, adjusting his tie. "Charles, please, we can work this out. I still love you," Vanessa whispered, her voice breaking. "Love doesn't pay the bills," Charles snapped, finally meeting her gaze with cold eyes. "I need a partner who enhances my brand, someone who makes me look powerful and relevant. You're too simple. You're not enough." His words struck her like a physical blow. Vanessa had always believed that simplicity was her strength. Now it felt like her greatest flaw. Charles left without another word, slamming the front door so hard that the glass in the hallway cabinet rattled. Vanessa stood motionless, listening to the echo of his departure. Slowly, she sank to the floor, clutching the papers to her chest. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, each one a drop of silent grief for a marriage she thought would last forever. Hours passed. She sat there until the sun moved across the living room floor, turning her tears into tiny shimmering puddles on the marble tiles. Finally, Vanessa rose shakily and walked into the bedroom. She opened the closet and began packing. Each piece of clothing she folded felt like a chapter of her life being closed. The Ankara dress she wore on their first anniversary, the high heels she wore to his award ceremony, the simple kaftan she had on when they moved into this house. She tried to steady herself with deep breaths, but her mind spiraled with questions. What did I do wrong? Was I really not enough? Outside, a small taxi pulled up. The driver, an elderly man with a kind face, helped her with her suitcases. He noticed her puffy eyes and trembling hands but didn't ask questions. As they drove away, Vanessa looked back at the house one last time. It wasn't just a building. It was the dream they had built together, or so she thought. Now it stood behind her, cold and indifferent, a monument to betrayal. When they reached her new, small apartment in Surulere, Vanessa carried her bags inside alone. She sat on the edge of the bed in the unfamiliar room, staring at the plain walls. She had no idea what her future held. But in that quiet, tear-soaked moment, something inside her shifted. Deep beneath the pain, a small ember of strength glowed, waiting for the right moment to burst into flame. Vanessa barely slept that night in her small Surulere apartment. The room was simple. A single bed, a small dresser, and a lone window that let in the distant sounds of Lagos. The hum of okadas, the occasional shout of street vendors, and the bark of neighborhood dogs. Her pillow was soaked with tears, but as dawn broke, she found herself staring at the ceiling with a strange calmness. She reached for her phone and scrolled through old messages from Charles, from when they were newlyweds. Words like forever, my queen, and ride or die glowed on the screen, mocking her. Her phone buzzed suddenly. It was an email from Mrs. Adams, her mentor and the investor liaison she had been working with in secret. Vanessa's heart pounded as she opened it. Vanessa, the documents have been reviewed and everything is ready to sign. The New York investors are excited. Congratulations. This is the final step before announcing the billion-dollar global deal. A flood of emotions washed over her. Disbelief, excitement, and deep sadness. She had planned to share this news with Charles as a surprise, hoping it would finally earn his respect and mend the growing distance between them. But now he was gone, and he would never know the woman he just discarded was on the brink of becoming one of the most powerful female entrepreneurs in Africa. Mrs. Adams called next. Her voice was steady and encouraging. Vanessa, my dear, this is your moment. Don't let this heartbreak overshadow your light. The world is waiting for your brilliance. Vanessa took a shaky breath. Mrs. Adams, I don't even know where to start. I feel broken. Broken? No. Mrs. Adams corrected firmly. You are finally free to become who you were meant to be. You are about to change lives, yours and millions of others. Now stand up and sign those papers. For the first time since Charles left, Vanessa felt her spirit stir. She thought about the rural women she worked with, the farmers who harvested the raw ingredients she loved so much. She remembered the testimonies from women whose skin conditions she had helped heal, and the dream she had always held close to her heart, to create something truly Nigerian, yet powerful enough to compete globally. She opened her laptop and reviewed the documents. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she imagined the weight of her signature, the final act that would transform her destiny forever. With a deep breath, she signed. When she closed her laptop, Vanessa sat in silence. In that moment, she felt both raw and reborn. She was no longer just Charles's wife. She was Vanessa, creator, visionary, and soon-to-be billionaire. Outside, the first rays of morning sun spilled into the room, gently illuminating her face. Felt like a quiet, sacred blessing. While Vanessa was signing the documents that would change her life forever, Charles was already moving on, or so he believed. He had always craved attention. It wasn't enough to succeed. He needed people to see him succeed. So, just a week after Vanessa left, Charles began flaunting a new relationship online. Her name was Samantha, a 27-year-old beauty influencer with a massive following. Samantha had a slim frame, caramel-toned skin, and a magnetic laugh that made her Instagram reels go viral. She wore imported wigs, designer dresses, and carried the latest luxury handbags. Charles adored the thrill. Every photo with Samantha earned thousands of likes and comments like, "Power couple," and "Goals." He felt validated, reborn. They attended high-profile parties in Victoria Island, posed at fancy rooftop dinners, and vacationed in Dubai. Charles believed he had upgraded, that Vanessa was now nothing more than a faded chapter in his perfectly curated life story. One evening, as they lounged by the pool of a luxury hotel, Samantha took a selfie, her diamond-studded sunglasses reflecting the Lagos skyline. Charles watched her, a proud smirk on his lips. "You know," he said, sipping his cocktail, "you're everything Vanessa wasn't. Classy, modern, ambitious in the right way." Samantha paused. She tilted her head, studying him with those sharp, watchful eyes that many mistook for pure innocence. "What exactly did Vanessa do?" she asked lightly. Charles waved dismissively. "She was obsessed with some small skincare hustle, always mixing oils and roots like some village herbalist. Couldn't even hold a conversation at business dinners." Samantha laughed politely, but inside, a spark of curiosity ignited. She had come across Vanessa's name before, in whispers online, small articles about a Nigerian entrepreneur revolutionizing natural skincare. The next day, while Charles was at a meeting, Samantha began her own investigation. She searched for Vanessa's brand and found a freshly updated website showcasing luxurious packaging, glowing client testimonials, and a mysterious note about an upcoming global partnership announcement. As she scrolled through Vanessa's story, her passion for Nigerian botanicals, her mission to empower local farmers, her raw authenticity, Samantha felt something unexpected: respect. For the first time, she questioned the fairy tale image Charles had painted of his ex-wife. When Charles returned that night, drunk and bragging about closing another real estate deal, Samantha smiled at him. But deep inside, her perception had already started to shift. She began to wonder if Charles's upgrade was truly an upgrade at all, or just another flashy mask covering his insecurities. Meanwhile, Vanessa, still hidden from the spotlight, continued to prepare for the biggest launch of her life, unaware that the tides around her ex-husband were quietly beginning to turn. Samantha scrolled through Vanessa's website long into the night, long after Charles had drifted off to a drunken sleep beside her. At first, she had only meant to glance. But as she read about Vanessa's mission to support local communities, her groundbreaking formulations using Nigerian botanicals, and her vision to make African skincare a global standard, she found herself genuinely impressed. The articles painted a very different woman than the one Charles had described. Not a village herbalist, but a true visionary. Samantha began watching interviews and behind-the-scenes footage Vanessa had posted online before her disappearance from social media. She noticed Vanessa's calm voice, her confident eyes, and the way she talked passionately about empowering women. Why would Charles hide all this? Samantha wondered. In the days that followed, Samantha started paying closer attention to Charles's stories. She noticed the small cracks in his narrative, his habit of exaggerating his own achievements, twisting small conflicts into reasons for big betrayals. One morning, over breakfast, Charles boasted about a supposed new real estate deal in Banana Island. Samantha barely listened, her mind still replaying Vanessa's speeches. "Charles," she finally said, setting her glass of orange juice down, "did you ever think maybe Vanessa was onto something big? Like, maybe her business wasn't as small as you thought?" Charles scoffed. "Don't start that nonsense, Sam. She was wasting time with creams and roots. That's not real business." But Samantha saw it, the quick flicker of worry behind his dismissive laugh. That evening, she began telling her friends about Vanessa's brand. One of them, a fashion PR executive, nearly screamed on the phone. "Do you know how many investors are talking about that skincare line? There's a rumor she signed a global distribution deal worth billions." Samantha's heart dropped. She checked Vanessa's website again and saw the cryptic banner. "A new era begins. Watch this space." Meanwhile, Vanessa was in Ikoyi, finalizing plans with Mrs. Adams and the international investors. They were planning an exclusive reveal gala, a night that would make her the face of African luxury skincare worldwide. Samantha began to see Charles differently each day. His arrogance felt hollow now. His constant need to prove himself started to feel desperate rather than powerful. That night, when Charles leaned over to kiss her forehead, she smiled weakly but turned away once he closed his eyes. She knew he didn't realize it yet, but his life was about to be turned upside down. As Samantha drifted to sleep, she felt a strange mix of pity and anticipation. She had front-row tickets to a downfall she suspected would shake all of Lagos, and she couldn't help but wonder what Vanessa would do when her light finally shattered the darkness Charles had cast over her. In a sleek, glass-walled conference room in Ikoyi, Vanessa sat at the head of a long table. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the polished wood and casting her in a quiet, powerful glow. Mrs. Adams sat to her right, beaming like a proud mother. Across from her were three representatives from the New York-based investment group, smartly dressed, eyes sharp and eager. They had flown in just to finalize the billion-dollar partnership that would take Vanessa's brand global. Vanessa held a thick contract in her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the final pages. Not from fear, but from the weight of it all. Just a few months ago, she had been labeled a simple housewife, a woman who played with creams. Now, she was about to become one of the most powerful women in the African beauty industry. Mrs. Adams leaned in, whispering, "You've worked hard for this. It's your moment. Own it." Vanessa closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. Memories flooded her mind. The nights she spent perfecting formulas, the small farmers she had traveled hours to meet, the countless times Charles belittled her dreams. With a decisive motion, she signed the final page. The room erupted into applause. The New York executives stood to shake her hand, their eyes filled with respect. Mrs. Adams reached out and hugged her tightly. After the signing, they moved to the adjoining ballroom to discuss the launch gala. Vanessa walked slowly across the marble floor, her elegant green dress flowing behind her like a queen's robe. She paused to look out the wide windows, watching the busy Lagos traffic far below. She felt taller somehow, as though the weight that had once bent her over had transformed into wings. Later that evening, as she sat in her hotel suite overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, Vanessa allowed herself a quiet moment of joy. She poured a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice, her personal tradition when celebrating big milestones, and toasted silently to herself, to growth, to resilience, and to every woman who was ever told she wasn't enough. She whispered, raising her glass to the fading Lagos sunset. Unbeknownst to her, social media was already buzzing. The investment firm had hinted at a historic partnership with a Nigerian entrepreneur, and industry insiders were speculating wildly. In that serene moment, Vanessa didn't think of Charles at all. She thought only of her journey, her newfound freedom, and the millions of women she was about to inspire. Samantha stared at her phone screen, her fingers trembling with barely restrained rage. She had been following Vanessa's brand updates obsessively, each new milestone twisting inside her like a knife. Vanessa had become a global icon almost overnight. Fashion magazines called her the Queen of African Skincare, while luxury bloggers praised her as a symbol of modern African elegance and power. Samantha watched as Vanessa's face appeared on billboards, talk shows, and even an International Beauty Awards nomination. Charles, on the other hand, pretended not to care. But Samantha knew him better than anyone now. She could see the jealousy simmering behind his forced laughter at business dinners, the bitterness behind each sarcastic comment about homemade creams. One night, Samantha decided she'd had enough. She poured 2 glasses of wine and waited for Charles to return from his latest meeting. When he walked in, she handed him a glass and gave him a long, sultry kiss. He looked surprised but pleased. "Why the sudden sweetness?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. She sat across from him, leaning forward, her eyes sharp. "Because we're going to fix everything. Together." Charles tilted his head, curious but wary. "You and I are stronger together." "Charles," Samantha purred. Vanessa doesn't deserve to keep all that success to herself. We deserve it too. After all, she wouldn't have gotten this far without you supporting her in the early years. Charles shifted uncomfortably, but Samantha pressed on. We convince her you want her back. She takes you in. Then we gain access to her wealth, and when the time is right, we leave with everything. You and me. Just imagine, we'd be unstoppable. Charles listened in stunned silence. For a fleeting moment, he saw the plan unfold. The money, the power, the sweet taste of revenge. He finally nodded slowly. Yes, you're right. I supported her for years. I deserve my share. Samantha's lips curved into a satisfied smile. She leaned in and kissed him again, a triumphant heat in her eyes. But as she pulled away, she didn't notice the tiny flicker of deception that crossed Charles's face. Deep inside, he was already plotting a different ending. One where he kept it all for himself. That night, Samantha drifted off to sleep with dreams of luxury villas and private jets. Charles, meanwhile, sat by the window, staring into the Lagos night, already thinking ahead, far beyond her reach. Vanessa, blissfully unaware, continued to focus on her expanding empire, unaware of the twisted web of betrayal slowly tightening around her. Charles moved fast. The very next morning, he began assembling a collection of old items he knew would pierce Vanessa's heart. Their framed wedding photo, a handwritten love letter she once left in his briefcase, and the tiny beaded bracelet she had made for him during their first Christmas together. He arranged them neatly inside an antique wooden box. Every piece was carefully chosen to tug at her emotions and break down the walls she had built. After 3 days of planning and rehearsing his words, he finally sent her a long message. Vanessa, I was blind. Samantha poisoned my mind. You are the only woman I have ever loved. I see it all now, your kindness, your brilliance. Please give me another chance to make things right. I can't live without you. Vanessa read the message at midnight. Her heart thudded against her ribs, the memories flooding back in unstoppable waves. She looked at the wedding photo in the box he had sent earlier that evening, her fingers trembling as they traced the edges. In her mind, a storm raged. Should I give him another chance? After all, they had built years together. Her heart wanted to believe him, but her spirit warned her otherwise. She sat alone in her living room for hours, staring into nothing. By dawn, she typed 2 simple words. I'll think about it. Charles celebrated silently, feeling certain he had her exactly where he wanted her. Inside, however, he had no intention of sharing any wealth with Samantha. His plan was to use Vanessa to gain access and then vanish alone with everything. A week later, Vanessa finally responded. She invited him to dinner at one of the most luxurious restaurants in Lagos. She asked him to come alone. Charles was ecstatic. He wore his finest navy suit, spritzed on expensive cologne, and rehearsed his lines in the mirror. When he arrived, Vanessa was waiting at a private table, dressed in an elegant black gown that shimmered under the low golden lights. Charles approached slowly, swallowing his nerves. Vanessa, he began, dropping his voice into a soft, regretful tone. She looked up, her eyes cool and unreadable. Charles, sit. The dinner that followed was careful and tense. Vanessa listened to his rehearsed confessions, her expression a mask. After dessert, she paused, leaned forward and said, Let's take things slowly, but for now we can try again. Charles nearly leapt from his seat with excitement. He covered her hands with his, fighting the urge to smirk in triumph. Meanwhile, back at home, Samantha grew suspicious. Charles had been acting distant, distracted, even turning off his phone for hours. Late that night, she paced their living room in her silk robe, her mind a whirlpool of jealousy and fear. He's slipping away from me, she realized. He's planning to keep it all for himself. And in that moment, her rage ignited into something far more dangerous than jealousy, a determination to take matters into her own hands. The night after Charles's dinner with Vanessa, Samantha lay wide awake. Her mind replayed every moment of the past week. His sudden secrecy, his fake smiles, the coldness in his touch. She threw off her covers and paced the apartment like a lioness trapped in a cage. The luxurious decor around her now felt like a mocking echo of her own helplessness. He thinks he can outsmart me? After everything we planned together? Samantha's jealousy mutated into a plan of her own. She decided she would confront both of them, publicly and dramatically. 2 nights later, she arrived unannounced at Vanessa's private apartment in Victoria Island. Samantha wore nothing but a daring black bikini and long white socks pulled all the way up to her thighs. She strutted confidently into the living room where Vanessa and Charles sat, apparently discussing their new start. Charles sprang up from his seat, eyes wide. "Samantha, what are you doing here?" Samantha twirled playfully, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Oh, come on, Charles. You remember how we used to get down, don't you? I know you missed this cake," she said, shamelessly smacking her behind and laughing loudly. Vanessa froze, stunned by the surreal intrusion. Her face shifted from shock to quiet, simmering fury. Charles turned quickly to Vanessa, his voice trembling. "Vanessa, please. She's not supposed to be here. She's making a scene. I swear, I have nothing to do with this." He grabbed Samantha by the arm, pulling her toward the door. But Samantha twisted back, leaning over her shoulder with a wicked smile. "Oh, don't act shy now, Charles. You promised me we'd take everything together, remember? We were supposed to disappear to Bali, baby." Charles clenched his jaw, shoving her gently toward the hallway. "Enough. Stop it. Let's go outside and talk." In the hallway, Samantha yanked her arm free. "What's your problem? You think I'm stupid? You're abandoning me," Charles whispered harshly, looking around to make sure Vanessa couldn't hear. "Be patient, Samantha. Everything is under control. Once I get what I want, I'll come back for you. Just trust me." She scoffed, crossing her arms, her eyes burning with betrayal. Charles stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We'll still have it all, I promise." Then, in a move that surprised even her, he kissed her. A calculated kiss to shut her up and buy more time. Samantha stood frozen, her heart a mess of love, rage, and confusion. Charles quickly pulled away and pushed her out the door. "Go home. Wait for my call." As the door slammed shut, Samantha stood in the corridor, breathing heavily. She realized then that she was no longer part of his future. She was simply a tool he intended to discard. Her lips trembled, her eyes glassy. In that instant, her heartbreak twisted into something sharp and dangerous. She decided she wouldn't wait for Charles's next move. If she couldn't have him and the money, she would make sure he got nothing. The next morning, Vanessa sat alone in her private suite. She wore a simple, elegant robe and sipped from a cup of tea she hadn't touched much. The room, usually a safe retreat filled with warm light and fresh flowers, felt cold and hollow today. Her mind replayed Samantha's sudden intrusion over and over. The sight of Charles awkwardly defending himself, the confused look in Samantha's eyes. It all gnawed at her spirit like a slow poison. Vanessa had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and now they were screaming. Something wasn't right. Her chief security officer, Michael, a broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes and a soft voice, knocked gently before stepping in. He had been assigned to her since her billion-dollar deal, overseeing every detail of her safety. "Ma'am, you need to see this," he said, holding up a tablet. Vanessa set down her tea, her pulse quickening as Michael tapped the screen. A surveillance video played, audio crisp, the image clear. She saw Charles and Samantha in the hallway the previous night. Charles whispering, "Be patient. Everything is under control. Once I get what I want, I'll come back for you. Just trust me." Then, she watched in horror as he kissed Samantha. Vanessa pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "What plan? What does he mean by everything is under control?" she muttered, her voice hoarse. Michael looked at her with sympathetic eyes. "I believe he never intended to return to you genuinely. He was playing you both, ma'am." Vanessa felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Her heart thudded so loud it echoed in her ears. She stood abruptly, anger and devastation bubbling over. "Where is he now?" "He's in his office." "In a meeting," Michael replied carefully. Vanessa didn't wait for another word. She grabbed her handbag and stormed out, her robe flying behind her like a dark storm cloud. 20 minutes later, she burst into Charles's office in Ikoyi, interrupting a high-profile meeting with clients and executives. The room fell silent. Charles looked up, his face draining of color. "Vanessa, what are you—" "Not here, please." She ignored him, her voice rising with each word. "Don't you dare ever come back. After everything you did. After I trusted you and brought you back into my life. This is how you repay me." Charles tried to hush her, nervously glancing at the shocked faces in the room. "Vanessa, please. Let's talk about this later." She held up the tablet, pressed play, and the room filled with the damning audio of Charles promising Samantha he'd return to her. Gasps echoed through the conference room. Some executives pushed back their chairs. Others covered their mouths in shock. Charles lunged forward to grab the tablet, but Vanessa pulled it away. Her tears streamed down as she choked out, "I'd have my staff gather your things. Don't bother coming back to my house. We're done." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving a stunned silence behind her. Charles felt a sudden, crushing panic. His clients began packing up immediately. Within minutes, he received calls. Contracts canceled, partnerships dissolved, and finally, the worst, he was fired on the spot. Vanessa stepped into her car outside, her heart pounding like a drum of war. She pressed her forehead against the window and whispered, "How did it come to this?" But deep inside, a tiny flame of relief flickered. She had chosen herself again. Charles stumbled out of the office building that afternoon, his mind a fog of rage and desperation. His phone buzzed nonstop with bad news. Investors pulling out, his accounts frozen, his reputation completely shattered. He needed to talk to someone to find a way to spin this disaster. He thought of Samantha. She was the only person who might still stand by him. By the time he arrived at her luxury apartment in Victoria Island, his shirt was wrinkled, and his hair was disheveled. He knocked frantically. Samantha opened the door, arms crossed, her face stony and cold. "Look at you," she hissed, her voice low and sharp. A snake caught in his own trap. Charles stepped inside shakily. "Samantha, please, you have to help me. Vanessa ruined everything. I have nothing left." Samantha laughed bitterly. "You thought you could play me? That I wouldn't find out you planned to keep it all to yourself?" Charles's mouth fell open, but no words came out. He tried to reach for her, but she pushed him back. "You're pathetic," she spat. "I should have known you'd betray me too. There's no way I'd ever trust you again." The argument escalated quickly. Charles's face twisted with fury. "After everything I did for you? You wouldn't even be here without me." Samantha shoved him harder. "Get out of my house, Charles. You're finished." Charles snapped. With one violent motion, he raised his hand and struck her across the face. A thunderous slap that echoed through the pristine living room. Samantha stumbled backward, her head striking the edge of a large ceramic flower vase. The vase toppled, crashing to the ground. She collapsed in a sickening thud, her eyes wide and lifeless. Charles froze. His chest heaved as he stared at her still body, blood slowly pooling beneath her head. "Sam! Samantha!" he whispered, dropping to his knees, shaking her shoulders. But she didn't move. At that exact moment, Samantha's younger sister and the apartment security guard burst in. They stopped in horror at the doorway, seeing Charles hunched over the lifeless body. Charles turned slowly, his hands shaking and covered in blood. Their eyes locked. The security guard lunged forward, but Charles bolted toward the balcony, leaped down to a lower floor, and ran into the night. His mind was in chaos. He sprinted until his legs gave out, finally collapsing beside the lagoon bridge, hidden under the cover of darkness. He sat there for hours, wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face, trembling. His thoughts spiraled. Vanessa caused this. If she had just stayed quiet, if she hadn't hidden her success, none of this would have happened. Hot tears rolled down his face as he clenched his fists. "You did this to me, Vanessa. You'll pay for all of it," he muttered, his voice shaking with rage. By morning, he had made up his mind. With the last cash he had left, he rented a gun from a back-alley contact and began his journey to Vanessa's mansion. A final, desperate act of vengeance. Vanessa's mansion in Ikoyi stood still that evening, its wide corridors echoing with a serene hush. Inside, Vanessa sat alone at her dining table, wearing a flowing emerald green dress. A glass of fresh juice rested beside her untouched plate. She tried to focus on the news playing on her iPad, but her mind wandered in loops. Charles's betrayal, Samantha's drama, the billion-dollar empire she had to protect. Despite everything, she had tried to believe in love again, but it had left her standing in ruins. Twice. Outside, security cameras flickered. A dark figure in a hoodie slipped quietly through the gates, gun concealed beneath his jacket. Charles moved like a wounded animal, his eyes wild with desperation. Inside, Vanessa finally stood, stretching her shoulders, when she heard the faint creak of the main door. She turned, her heartbeat thunderous in her ears. Charles stepped in slowly, his face twisted with rage and loss. "So, this is the new Queen's palace," he snarled, his voice low and venomous. Vanessa's breath caught. She stepped back instinctively, her hand trembling over her chest. "Charles, you need to leave. We can still fix." "Fix what?" he exploded, throwing his arms wide. "My reputation is gone. My money is gone. And Samantha is gone because of you." Vanessa shook her head, tears rising. "Please, you don't have to do this. We can help you." "Help me?" Charles laughed bitterly, tears mixing with sweat on his face. "The only help I need is my share of your fortune. I carried you for years, Vanessa. I built this family while you played with creams and roots. I deserve this life too." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I accepted you back even after everything you did. I still tried to help." "That's not enough," Charles roared, pulling the gun from his jacket and pointing it at her. "I want my own share, and I want it in cash right now." Vanessa's hands shot up, her eyes wide with terror. "It doesn't have to go this way. You can still come back from this." Charles's face twisted even more. "Come back from what? I'm a murderer now, thanks to you. I have nothing left to lose." He stepped forward, gun shaking violently. Vanessa pleaded, her voice a trembling whisper. "Please, Charles, think about this, please. Pay me!" he screamed, lunging toward her. A single gunshot cracked through the mansion, echoing like a thunderclap. Vanessa screamed, stumbling backward, but then she realized it wasn't her. Charles dropped to the ground with a heavy thud, the gun sliding across the marble floor. Blood began to spread beneath him as he writhed in pain, clutching his side. Vanessa turned to see Michael, her chief security officer, standing at the entrance to the dining hall, his gun smoking, his face pale but resolute. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Michael shouted, rushing toward her. Vanessa nodded shakily, tears pouring down her face. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into Michael's arms as the rest of the security team flooded into the mansion. Paramedics arrived moments later, strapping Charles onto a stretcher. One doctor turned to Michael. "He's alive, but he needs immediate surgery. We have to go now." As they carried Charles out, Vanessa stood frozen in the middle of her dining room. Her body shook violently, but her mind felt eerily silent. How did it all get here? She wondered, staring blankly at the blood on the floor. How did love turn into this? Michael gently touched her arm, his voice low and careful. "You need to be careful, ma'am. I will always protect you, but I'm not God." Vanessa managed a weak nod, her heart thundering in her ears as the chaos of flashing lights and shouting officers filled the once peaceful mansion.
Thank you for watching. We hope you have enjoyed it here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as this will help us grow and do more. Have anything to say about the story? Feel free to drop a comment.